Kimspiracy.
For years, philosophers and intellectuals have debated the question, does history repeat itself? Greek historian Thucydides simply stated, history repeats itself, while Mark Twain believed that the past does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. French philosopher and fierce opponent of Christianity, Voltaire, asserted that history never repeats itself, man always does. And despite his rebellion against God, I think Voltaire came closest to understanding man's determination and inclination to repeat the mistakes of the past. In Ecclesiastes 1:4, we read, "One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever." Ecclesiastes 1:9 states, "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun." In the wheel of nature, there is a constant waxing and waning, a consistent ebb and flow. Seasons come, seasons go, while generations pass between them, each seeming to forget the lessons of the former. Throughout known history, nations have been raised up and nations have been broken down. Cultures have risen, cultures have fallen, and the common thread between them all is the character of their men. The United States and Rome are often compared as parallel powers, as they should be. Many societies have borrowed aspects from ancient Rome, but its influence is most profound in America. Our framers incorporated Roman ideas into our system of government, including fear of a centralized authority, the need for a senate, the necessity of checks and balances, open societies, and selfless leadership, and let's not forget architecture. Roman symbolism is rampant in American society, including our country's use of the eagle. Latin inscriptions can be found on all 13 original state seals, as well as the Great Seal of the United States. Early American coins featured the head of a Roman on one side because the founders didn't want to have a king on their coins. The American founders clearly hoped to emulate the best of the Roman Republic while avoiding the excesses that had transformed it into an empire. The United States Constitution is truly a magnificent document, and the wisdom that could only have been given by God to these men who wrote it is absolutely profound. Their foresight is simply amazing and as relevant today as it was when they sprinkled sand on the ink of their signatures to dry it. America's birth allowed the ancient prophecies of Israel becoming a nation again to be fulfilled. There is no doubt God shed His grace on thee. The history of ancient Rome spans 1,000 years, 500 years as a republic, 500 years as an imperial autocracy. But the closest parallels between Roman and American civilization occurred during the first 500 years of the Roman Empire. Both were born in revolt against monarchy. Both established republics with checks and balances, separation of powers, and protection of certain rights. Rome in the 6th century BC and America in the 18th century AD represented the greatest advances for individual liberty in the history of the world. Unparalleled prosperity and influence resulted in both cases. The early Romans of the Republic esteemed individual character above all else, character as defined as virtue, honesty, loyalty, dignity, diligence, self-discipline, goodwill, and candor. Formal education took place in the Roman home. It was administered by mom and dad. The connection between character and liberty was a powerful combination in Rome's success. Romans valued the rule of law, respect for and protection for the rights and property of others, all requiring a society of character. The void of morality in society is filled with chaos and tyranny, but its presence is what makes liberty possible. Rome rose from nothing and sustained itself for hundreds of years because of its citizens' strong character. But as with other nations before it, Roman officials became corrupt. The Roman Republic ended with the famous assassination of Julius Caesar in 27 BC. Consumed by decadence, sexual immorality, drunkenness, Rome was destroyed from within, and the same rejection of values and unchecked debauchery have infected American society today. Roman citizens discovered they could vote themselves luxuries out of the treasury, and once politicians discovered they could control the population through entitlements, the era of bread and circuses was born. By the time Jesus was born, 1/3 of the Roman population was on the government dole, and Rome's slow decline began. Her people grew lazy. Her once paralleled military could no longer sustain itself with Romans, so they had to hire mercenaries who were brought in to defend the empire. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, morphed into when in Rome, tell the Romans what to do. James Madison wrote in the Federalist Paper number 63 that the example of the government during the Roman Empire, especially the Senate, was unfit for imitation as they were repugnant to the genius of America. But despite the warnings of our forefathers, it appears that America today has done her best to emulate Rome in all aspects, before the Republic and after. No other country has the global influence and dominance of America, including military might and economic power, language, culture, commerce, technology, and ideas. America is a young country, but she was built on the backs of upstanding men and women of righteous moral fiber. Men and women who put God first, their family second, and their country third. Men and women with pioneering spirits and a faith so strong in God that they would build a nation that would exceed even a Republic Rome at her most gilded. Men and women of solid character. But, like the ancient Romans, American politicians had difficulty differentiating between public and private responsibilities and public and private resources. So, a pound of wheat, so to speak, was offered to the people from America's treasury, and soon our government became bloated with the Federal Reserve, the IRS, Social Security, etc., and our economy became one built on debt instead of wealth. But today in America, public services have declined while the pockets of elected public officials and their friends and their children have grown heavy with taxpayer coin. Just as in ancient Rome, numerous reforms to curb excesses have been resisted by the ruling class, as evidenced by the partisan, silly battles we see happening in American government today. The Roman middle class collapsed under the weight of cheap overseas labor. The transfer of labor overseas, lopsided trade deals that benefit every country but America, and technological change threaten to obliterate the middle class of America today. It may be too late to change. As Republicans and Democrats focused on political gain rather than public good, unrest has grown and festered, and it continues to build pressure against the invisible restraint that is holding American society back from complete and utter chaos. Our economic inability to satisfy all constituents despite printing worthless money, fused with social disagreements, endless wars, and the widening chasm between the haves and the have-nots, indicate that the fall of this once great nation will mirror the fall of other great nations before her, but in a much shorter period of time. We burned bright. We burned quick. Jesus said in Matthew 12:25 that every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Many Americans today want bread and circuses. Many Americans want the government to provide them with free education while forgiving the college debt of some, but not all. Let's not get crazy. Some Americans want the government to provide them with birth control pills and abortion on demand while screaming hysterically through bullhorns that the government has no right to interfere in free choice that she didn't even pay for. We did. In ancient Rome, there was no demand for abortion because parents simply threw their unwanted or disabled children out into the trash heap on the edge of the city to die a slow death of exposure. Candidates running for the highest office in the land want to restrict the rights of citizens with gun control while expanding the rights of non-citizens. In some states, illegal immigrants are given free health care and welfare assistance, while the immediate needs of Americans in other states who can't even drink the water supplied to them by the same elected officials asking for their vote are ignored. Some of Americans' politicians fly into fundraisers on private jets to stump for increasing taxes on an already overburdened citizenry to decrease our carbon footprint while they expand theirs with no hint of shame for their blatant hypocrisy. Many Americans today clamor for the death of the one thing that made us great, our Constitution. By abolishing the Electoral College, eliminating private insurance in exchange for Medicare or socialized medicine for all. I've seen loved ones die under government insurance. It ain't pretty and it sure ain't fair. Today, elected American politicians bleat for income equality while making hundreds of millions of dollars on legal insider trading, backroom deals, and laundering money disguised as foreign aid through their children. They thunder proclamations that successful innovators and entrepreneurs didn't build that and aren't entitled to benefit from their own ingenuity. Our branches of government are making a mockery of the system designed to protect the people, unbothered by the wasted tax dollars on an impeachment trial without any legal articles of impeachment. In the People's House, the guest speaker of the House of one party shreds the State of the Union speech of the president of the opposing party, signaling the end of adult behavior in the hallowed chambers that have hosted our representatives since the 35th Congress in 1857. There's blatant election fraud happening in Iowa to rig the nomination of the person the Democratic National Party wants, which for the second election in a row happens to run contrary to their party members' choice. We have socialists, and if we're being real, communist candidates running for the highest office in the land. We also have Joe Biden call one of the most important people in the room a voter, a lying dog-face pony soldier. All of this nonsense because the man currently occupying the Oval Office is a brilliant marketing genius, undeniably successful businessman. Y'all ain't living on Fifth Avenue in New York sitting on gold chairs, but deny it if you want. And an extremely popular reality show star who doesn't play by Washington's unspoken rules. Are we not entertained? But crooked politicians that we elected aside, let's look at the character of the people of America. In today's America, there is no respect for law and order from the top down. Dangerous criminals are let out with no bail, only to mock our broken justice system by immediately breaking the law again and immediately being released into society. Visit New York if you dare. Our officers are being ambushed in the streets. Our children are being dumbed down, sexualized, and exploited. Our elderly can't afford their medicine. Hollywood idiots dare lecture us with a speech on how parasitic we are while they hold golden statues dedicated to themselves. 1 in 3 Americans are in debt and 1 paycheck away from disaster. Churches are drying up. We work on average 4 months a year to pay our tax debt to the government. And when we're not trying to eke out a living, we're imprisoned in our homes because it's too dangerous to be out at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mothers are killing their children. Children are killing their parents or themselves and each other. Neighbors are slaughtering their neighbors at places of worship, grocery stores, and children's birthday parties. Social media is filled with images of over-filtered, underdressed, thirsty women who value the dollar more than themselves. Men have been demonized, feminized, and ostracized from society. Our government has declared white Christian men to be more of a threat to society than Antifa. The same intellectuals in the science community who refuse to allow creationism to be taught in schools alongside their collective agreed-upon theories are the same voices now insisting gender goes beyond the 23 chromosomes contained in the biological blueprint of man and woman. Boys may be girls, girls may be boys, do as thou will, live life pleasurably, just as it was in the days of Noah, and just as it was in the days before Rome fell. Is America destined to go the way of Rome? Well, the answer is simple. Do we as a society today exhibit the character that makes a republic great? Do we have virtue, honesty, loyalty, dignity, diligence, self-discipline, goodwill, candor, respect for the law and the property of others? Or have we become a people that ask not what we can do for our country, but what can our country do for us?
Kimspiracy.